Wabash Carnegie Public Library Oral History Program, interviewing Arthur J. Fedewa at his home, 634 Bond Street, Tuesday, March 27th, 1973. Well, it's a pleasant evening, and the first question I'm going to ask you is, where and when were you born?
In Michigan, little town of Portland, in 1893, November 14th.
What was your father's full name, and what was your mother's maiden name?
Father's name was Ferdinand. My mother's maiden name was Pease, P-E-E-Z.
Was this in the city or in the country? And describe your home and your family as a young boy.
Well, I was born about 5 miles from the town of Portland in a log house, and about a year and a half after, well, possibly 3-4 years after, my dad built a frame house, 2-story frame, and we moved into that. I am the second youngest of 7 children, and all of them are deceased with the exception of my younger sister, who resides in California, Taft, California.
Had your father been married more than once?
Yes. My mother died when I was around 4 years old, and my father remarried, I'd say a couple of years after that.
Did he marry a woman who had been married before and had children?
Yes. He married a widow lady with a daughter who was about 5 years older than I am.
What did your father's parents, were they from the old country or were they from Michigan?
They came from the old country, just where, this is Germany. They came from both, my grandparents came from Germany, and I didn't know them too well because they passed away before I got to be very old.
What was your life like around the house when you were a kid? Tell me about the routine and so forth. Did you go to school?
Well, at that time they had district schools. This school that I went to was 2 miles from our home, and at that time, of course, we had no sidewalks or no pavements. They were all dirt roads, and occasionally in the wintertime we had to paddle our way through heavy snowbanks, sometimes much higher than our heads, and a lot of times we were in the farmers' fields not knowing where the road ended. And had a little pond next to the schoolhouse. This is a white frame building with all, well, at that time they had all the grades in that building, and it was heated by a pot-bellied wood stove, and I imagine there were possibly 20 or 25 children from first grade up to 12th. Had a pond next to the school. We used to skate on in the winter time, and in the summertime we used to do a little frogging and pollywogging, and once in a while catch a little fish there during recess hours.
Do you remember any of the teachers? Any of the teachers had an impression on you? Made an impression?
Well, we had, there was a Mr. Cutler. We had several men teachers, and then lady teachers after that, and I went to school there the first, second, and third grade, and then we moved to Portland. Our farm was about a mile, I'd say a mile from the schoolhouse, and I went to the public school there, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, and later on I entered a parochial school, St. Patrick's School, and went through the 8th grade, and from there on we had a class in typewriting, bookkeeping, and business education, and I took that. That I think lasted about 7 or 8 months.
This was after you graduated from grade school, and then you went to this
right.
Commercial. Where was this commercial school, and who ran it then?
That was at St. Patrick's. This was a parochial school run by the nuns. Today, they abandoned this commercial class right after. There was only 4 of us, 2 girls and 2 boys, that were in this class, and they abandoned it right after they graduated us. Why, I don't know.
Sort of phased you out, huh? Well, did you feel that your education was complete, or you had gone further than your father, possibly? Was that the feeling at the time?
Well, in those days, especially the farmers, they felt an education was unnecessary, and they frowned upon higher education. In fact, I had to work in the fields quite a bit, and that kept me out of school part of the time, and going back, and after losing several days out of each week for the fall harvest, I fell behind the rest of the class, and it was sort of embarrassing to go back. But on the whole, they frowned on higher education. In fact, a college education was unnecessary, completely unnecessary, they felt at that time.
Was your sister still home, the one that later went to Cincinnati? Was she still there, or had she left already?
She left around about 1904.
Mm-hmm. How old would you have been then?
I was born in 1893, so 1904 is about
9
11 years.
Yeah, you'd have been 11 years old.
Right.
Yeah. And she was the teaching order at the St. Patrick's School. Was that the order?
Yes.
That was the order that she joined.
No, she didn't join that order. She joined an order that had their mother house at Mount St. Joseph in Cincinnati, right out of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah. How did she happen to get with that order?
She was a dressmaker, and did quite a bit of work for my aunt that lived in Lansing, and my aunt's daughters went to parochial school there, and these nuns were teaching, and my sister got pretty well acquainted with them and got interested in that order.
Mm-hmm.
So she entered, and later on taught the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades.
In Lansing?
In Lansing, in Lima, Ohio, and Cleveland, Ohio, and number. She taught for quite a while, and of course each couple of years they were transferred to another area. So she had quite a number of places where she taught throughout Michigan and Ohio.
Going back to your parents, do you remember either of your grandparents on your mother's side or your father's side?
Vaguely. my father's uncle, my father's father, my grandfather, his name was George, and he and grandmother used to come over to the house occasionally, and he usually had a treat with them, which consisted of sugar cubes, and us kids thought that was quite a treat in those days.
Did any of your other uncles and aunts live around this area, this general area there?
In Portland, no, but in a little town of Westphalia, which was about 9 miles from there, they were all farmers, and their offspring are still around there, most of them. Some of them in Lansing and some of them in Owasso and areas. They've sort of left their nest too and have gone different places.
Yeah. What did your father look like? What physically did he resemble you or one of your grandchildren? Or?
Well, I would say he was a man about 5'10", and at the time of my youth, he wore a mustache, and was, I'd say, rather dignified-looking man.
Wear glasses?
In his later years, he wore glasses, yes.
Mm-hmm. And what did your mother look like?
She was, I always thought, a very beautiful lady. Probably, I'd say 5'7" or 8", rather slim, and black hair. And I really can't remember too much of her because I was pretty young when she passed away.
Well, you finished commercial school. Anything exciting happened before you got out of school? This was around the time of the Spanish-American War and that time. Any family or anything?
Well, I can't say. I don't recall anything in particular at this time.
Excuse me.
Standing.
I think I heard you. Now we're going to get on to, you finished the commercial course, and what turn does your life take?
Well, the following November, I struck out for Lansing, Michigan, which is 25 miles from our hometown. Took a train with high hopes of becoming an office manager right away. And I got there and had a few interviews and was turned down. And I stayed around Lansing for a couple of days with my aunt and uncle. And then I decided to go to Detroit. I had an aunt and uncle living in Detroit. So I went over there.
What year would this have been? Around?
About 1910. I did about 1910.
Yeah, and you were?
17 years old.
17 years old, okay.
And I knew their name, didn't know their address, but I finally got to the Union Station and looked in the telephone directory, and their name was Schaefer, Henry Schaefer, and I found about 8 Henry Schaefers listed there, which was very confusing, but I finally picked one out that I thought might be the one, and sure enough it was. And I got their house number. Didn't think to call them by telephone, but I did get their house number, and I started to walk. They lived on Catherine Street, which was about, I would say, 6 or 8 blocks from where I was, from the Union Station. I got to Cadillac Square. I asked a policeman who was directing traffic where I could find Catherine Street, and he pointed out to where it was. And I picked up my suitcase and started over, which I thought was a proper direction, and I couldn't find Catherine Street. So I went to a cop again and asked him if he could direct me to Catherine Street. He said, heck, he said, I just told you here 10 minutes ago where it was. And he pointed it out to me again, so I started out and finally found it and walked to their home. And they were rather surprised and wondered what I was doing so far away from home. I told them I was seeking my fortune, looking for a job as a office manager, bookkeeper. And my Uncle Henry, whom I stayed with there, said, well, says, I'm working for a piano company here, and we're on the second floor, and our black elevator man is leaving, and if you want to run an elevator, I think I can put a good word in for you and get you a job. Well, that seemed to me to be quite thrilling, so next morning I went down to work with him and was interviewed by his boss, and he gave me a job. Now he said, we'll give you $10 a week and we'll furnish a uniform. So this black man who was running the elevator showed me how to run it, gave me a few pointers, and then the boss says, we'll have his uniform cleaned and you can start wearing it tomorrow. Which I did, and I had my ups and downs there, running that elevator. And along around Christmas time, the bookstore manager, who was on the first floor, they occupied the first floor and the third floor of this building. At 9 o'clock, we used to work pretty late, always on Saturdays and on Christmas time. On the evenings, we always worked till 9 o'clock or later. And he pressed a dollar bill in my hand and wished me Merry Christmas, which I thought was terrific. And I went home happy. And then right after Christmas, the manager of the piano company says, Art, he says, how would you like to deliver player piano rolls? And we'll get somebody else to run the elevator. So I thought that was quite a boost, so I says, fine. So I started delivering piano rolls and sweeping out and dusting.
What was the name of the company?
Farron Piano Company at that time.
F-E-R-R?
F-A-R-R-A-N-D. They're defunct now.
Yeah.
But that time they had a factory in Detroit, and I, of course, worked in this retail store. After doing that for some little time, I got pretty well acquainted with the town of Detroit. We used to get 6 tokens for a quarter. Well, when I had some piano rolls to deliver, they'd give me a dime so I could go both ways. Well, I bought these tokens, so I was one right ahead all the time. And a lot of times I could get transfers and save another nickel, which I did. But I got pretty well acquainted with the town and liked it pretty well. And then the Victrola people, they put an agency in the store, and with the Victrolas and records, I sold records then for a while, and delivered those and demonstrated, and a little later on I started selling the Victrolas. And after working there for some time, I felt that I was pretty smart, so saw an ad in the paper that Crowley Milners wanted a manager for the record department and Victrola department. So I went over there and got that job as manager of their department. I worked there for quite a while. And the manager of Crowley Milners, he used to come up to our department once in a while and listen to a record or so. I got pretty well acquainted with him, and he sort of took a liking to me, and he got a job at Wolf and Dessauer's in Fort Wayne as store manager. And he left Crowley Milners and was gone about a week or two, and he phoned me one day and asked me if I wanted a better job, and I had. And I said, sure. I said, I'm always looking for something better. So he says, come down next Sunday, and I think I got a good job for you. So I went and met the boss, met Myron Dessauer and Sam Wolf, and got this job, take charge of their department, which was a fairly good size department.
How old would you have been then, roughly?
About 20, I imagine about 25. Wolf and Dessauer had just opened this new store on the corner of Calhoun and Washington Street in Fort Wayne. It was a 6-story building, all white, and it took up half a square block, and it was quite a place. In fact, we got business from half of Ohio, and just took in a pretty big area. And I worked at that, and I lived with a man, the name of Charlie Brink, and his wife. They lived on East Wayne Street, and I stayed with them, roomed over there.
How did you happen to get a room there? Through the paper, or?
No, I stayed at the Anthony Hotel when I first came to Fort Wayne. And a friend of mine from Detroit who had charge of the clothing department, or the men's clothing department in Crowley Milners, said, when you get to Fort Wayne, look up Jimmy Shields. He's a good friend of mine. He's in the clothing business. And tell him that I sent you. So Jimmy Shields happened to have his haberdashery and clothing department directly underneath the Anthony Hotel building.
Mm-hmm.
So I called on Jimmy and made myself acquainted and asked me where I was staying, and I told him at the hotel that I was looking for a place. So he says, well, he says, I got somebody that might have a room for you. And he introduced me to his partner, Adam Reinhardt. And Adam says, well, he says, I got a good friend that has a room, and I'll take you over there tonight and introduce you, and from then on it's yours. So I went over there and got acquainted and rented this room. In the middle of the block, Charlie's sister and her parents lived, and she used to walk past our house and down to her work. She was a stenographer downtown, and I kind of caught up with her one morning, and we sort of got acquainted. And next mornings after that, well, I sort of watched out of the window, and I saw her coming. Well, I'd make it a point to leave. And we walked down together, and finally in 1921, we were married.
What was her name?
Brink, Marie Brink.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a little place on Bell Avenue, small house, and furnished it ourselves. We lived there for a short while. And a little later on, I sort of got interested in having my own business. So a good friend of mine, the name of Nate Sowers, who was was the district manager for the Hoover Company in that district. He says, Art, he says, let you and I go into the phonograph and record business. And I says, what with? Well, he says, we can go over to Tepper's over here. That was a department store about 2 blocks away from Wolf and Dessars. And we got to talking to Mr. Tepper, and he had a man that was managing their phonograph department, and they let him out, so Nate Sowers and I took over. And several months after that, we were going pretty good. We had a fire, and pretty well ruined us. And after that, Sowers went back into the Hoover sweeper business again, and I got a job selling Hoover sweepers, door to door. So I worked at that as a door-to-door salesman, and finally became manager of that area. And I worked until about 1935, and then went to, well, in the meantime, about 3 years previous to that, I went to Huntington with the Hoover Company and worked through a hardware store there. And in 35, I left Huntington, moved my family and 4 children to Wabash, and operated an electrical appliance store with the privilege of buying it any time that I saw fit.
What was the name of the store?
That was Wickenheiser-Geedy Company. And
where were you located when you first came in?
In Wabash?
Yes.
14 West Market Street, which is now Woolworth's 5 and 10.
Mm-hmm.
So I operated that, managed that for a while, and on a 50-50 basis. And then Mr. Geedy came over one day, and he says, Art, he said, why don't you buy this place? And I said, what with? Well, he says, do you want it? I says, yeah. I said, that's been my dream for several years to eventually own it, but I said, I haven't got any money. Besides, I said, I've got debts. And he says, well, don't let that bother you. He says, I'll furnish the money if you want to buy it, if you're interested. I said, sure, I'm interested. So he says, okay. You take inventory, and right after first of the year, I'll come down and check it, and we'll make some arrangements. This was all verbal, and for several years it was the agreement was verbal. We never did sign any contract, but I took over and went along for about 3 years. That was in about 1941, I believe. I took it over and paid it off after a lot of hard work and long hours.
You just had a verbal agreement with Mr. Geedy? Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah.
But he eventually did write up a contract. And
how much? What was the inventory worth?
Oh, at that time, I would say that maybe 10,000, something like that.
Yeah.
The inventory, merchandise, and truck, delivery truck, and a safe, and office equipment, and fixtures.
Yeah. What was the store grossing back in those days?
Well, when I took it over, the previous manager grossed $12,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
First year I had, we went up to $40,000, and of course after that, each year I made it a point to increase a certain percentage and did, and we made our point. Kind of tough some years to increase 10% over the previous year, but we did it by hard work and watching our inventory, our costs.
Well, when you took over the business from Mr. Geedy then, what did you use for cash flow? What were you using for cash?
Well, that went with the business.
He sold you the accounts receivable also?
No, he took care of the accounts receivable and did for some time after I bought it, because he took them over. And in that way, we got straightened around. And
in other words, well, you didn't have a cash flow coming in then, other than your own.
Just enough to live on.
Yeah, but he had taken. You didn't buy the accounts receivable, and you had no cash to put in the business at all.
At the time, no. It was strictly where he furnished the capital.
The inventory and the capital.
Right.
Yeah, and how much did this amount to? Just off the top of your head.
Oh, I don't know. I think we carried a bank account, I imagine, around $1,000, $1,500, something like that.
Which would have been more than adequate in those days.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And then we run along in that building until we had a lease on it, and Moyne Lutz was the owner of the building, and he came over one day and he says, how much do you want to get out of here? So I've got a deal pending for this block, and he says, I need the space, and he says, I know, he says, you've got a lease, and he says, I'm perfectly willing to pay you if you can find another place to move to. I'll be glad to reimburse you for your moving and other expenses, and I'll pay you some of the rent. So we bought the building on Market Street, where the appliance store is now.
That's 31 East Market. How did you happen to buy the building? What presented itself?
Well, I had joined the Rotary Club about a year before, and
that'd be 1940, roughly, 41.
Yeah, in that area.
Yeah.
And one day, Art Grabner, who was at that time manager of Sears Roebuck and Company, who were located in the next block, he stopped over at noontime, and we used to go to lunch together at Rotary, and he pointed over to this building, and he says, Art, he says, let's buy it. And I said, what with? Well, he says, we can make some arrangements and buy it. I said, Art, I said, I don't know anything about real estate. If it's appliances, I'd be interested, but I said, real estate, I said, know nothing about. But I said, I do have to have a place to move. I want to rent a place. And he says, let's take this under consideration, think about it, which we did, and finally got a hold of the realtor that had it for sale, and we took a trip to Indianapolis, talked to the finance company that owned the building at the time, and we bought it before we came back. And the more we got to thinking about it, there was quite a chunk to bite off at one time, because there were actually 6 stores there in that one building, and sort of scared us. But we talked to Ted Williams and Paul Thomas, who owned the restaurant next door in the building, and asked them what type of lease we could get out of them, or if they were interested in buying. He said, yeah. I said, we don't want a lease, but we'll buy it off you. So we paid $32,000 for the whole building.
That was from the alley to the Brunswick Club, the 6 buildings there on East Market.
Yeah, right. And we sold this 1/3 of it, these two storerooms, to Thomas and Williams for $16,500. So we didn't fare too bad on that deal because we still had 2/3, and the original cost was, I think, about $32,000.
Now, how long after you bought the building did this happen? Immediately, or that you sold your third of the building? How?
Oh, yes, right. Within a very short time.
Yeah.
Because we thought it was a pretty big undertaking at that time. So I was fortunate. I had some cash because during the war years we turned all our paper into cash. We had an account that came due, it was turned into cash, and we had the money, didn't know what to do with it, couldn't buy merchandise, there wasn't anything available. So we just put that down as a down payment.
And then you moved the store over there.
Moved the store over there, right.
Was that another big move for you, or were you reluctant to make the move, or had you had enough confidence by this time that you felt you could have gone any place?
Well, after we had the building, of course, Baber Automotive Company were in the part that I moved into, and they had bought a place on Canal Street and were going to move, so we felt, well, there's a vacancy coming up, so I moved in there. And we remodeled it, put on a new front, and remodeled the interior, and put it in pretty good shape.
So when did you actually get moved over there? What year would that have been?
I would say around 42 or 3.
1942?
I would think around that, yeah.
Did you remodel the front and everything? And well, that was
well,
later.
We didn't remodel.
You did another extensive remodeling later.
Yeah, that's right. The front was put in. The new front was put on later on.
Yeah.
But we still had the old-fashioned front, and the interior was remodeled a bit, but not the extent that.
I don't want to correct you or anything, but I never even came to Wabash until 1946. And I remember you being in the old building across the street where Woolworths.
In 46?
Yeah. I don't think you moved during the war. You stuck to, didn't you stay out the war in the old building where Woolworths is now?
Well, I didn't think it was that late because I joined Rotary around 42, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And that was shortly after that.
I think that when I came 46 or late 46, that you were still in the old location. It might have been a little later that you moved over there.
Well, it's possible. However, I moved shortly after we bought the building. The way we bought that building, I have records here. I can say where it's either in 43.
We can correct that later. That's no problem. Well, what happened then after you moved into the building?
Well, we operated there with the increased inventory. We had ample room, and we installed an elevator. We took a wall out and installed a freight elevator, large freight elevator, which could be used for all the floors on both sides. And operated that. We used the upstairs for a warehouse. And at one time had a electric kitchen on the second floor. We used to have parties, used to have cooking schools, and things of that sort, maybe a card party or something of that nature. It helped us to advertise our wares.
Well, when did you retire then? What year was that?
1958.
58. Did you, were you ready for retirement or not?
Well, yes and no. I'd worked pretty hard while I was in business, and I sort of felt that I'd like to do a little exploring and a little fishing and a few other things that I hadn't been able to indulge in for some time.
Do you think it was a wise move to retire at 65? Or?
In a way, the opportunity presented itself at the time where my son Tom, took over, and I got out, and I miss the people. I still do. I like people, and I get a big kick out of meeting some of the old timers that I sold merchandise to 35 years ago, and that's one thing that I do miss. Otherwise, I think that at age 65, I'd had it. I mean, I enjoyed being in business very much. I like people and liked to mingle with them, but it got to be a little chore because a person their memory isn't as keen as it was, and I could feel it that I'd sell probably a wash machine or a dryer or something of that sort to somebody, and the next month they'd come in and make a payment, and it'd be pretty hard for me to remember their names, and that got sort of embarrassing at times. And that was one reason why I felt that it was time to get out.
How about, we've fairly well covered your business career. Let's talk about church and religion and that. And let's start off by the influence of your parents in the little Catholic church in Westphalia and later in Portland, Michigan. And let's just develop that thing. Tell me about how it was as a kid and so forth, and how did you get your religious training and so forth?
You say my religious training?
Yeah. Where did it come from?
I never felt that I had much religious training. We went to church at Portland, and every Sunday we had a Sunday school, and after Mass, which would last maybe a half to three-quarters of an hour, and then a little later on, I went to the parochial school, and of course there we were taught religion together with the rest of our studies, and I felt that I knew the fundamentals of religion, but that's about as far as it went.
Yeah.
After all, you've got your laws, your 10 Commandments to go by, and if you watch those and keep them, that's about it as I see it. Of course, you always like to know more about your religion, the same as you do about anything else, but sometimes beyond a certain point, you don't go at my age.
How about, how was it for, you were probably, I'm just guessing, you were probably the only Catholic businessman in Wabash in the 30s, am I correct there?
The only other businessman that I can remember being Catholic in fact there were two of them. There was a little cobbler shop next to John Richards Tire Store, and the little man by the name of Freddie Enyart operated that. He was a Catholic. And then a couple of doors from 14 West Market Street, where the original store was, McNarney Brothers had a grocery store. And that, as I recall, was about the number.
Did you have any unusual experiences being Catholic in this basically Protestant community? And
well, I went in to see Mr. McNarney after I had gotten settled here, and I introduced myself, and I told him that I was a Catholic, and he said, well, he says, I wouldn't advertise that too much, and I just didn't know how to take that exactly, but he says people around here, he says he just don't love Catholics too well. He said, I just wouldn't advertise that point, and made me feel just a little bit cautious because after all, I'd spent some time in Huntington, and that was in Fort Wayne, and both of those places are at least 50% Catholic.
Mhm.
But we got by all right, and that was the time of the Ku Klux Klan, too. They were pretty active in this area.
Mhm. Do you have any personal remembrances of Klan activity or parades or cross burnings or?
In Fort Wayne, we had some pretty big parades there.
Uh-huh.
The Klan members were riding horses, and their horses were clothed in white sheets as well as the riders themselves, and they had a big band, and they'd really put on a big show. But
But you had no personal contact with the Klan or any prejudice shown you or anything like that?
No, none whatsoever. I never. I didn't advertise my religion. I just went along and minded my own business, and I never. In fact, a lot of these people that were Klansmen, that I found out later were Klansmen, I never knew at the time that they were. And I found them all pretty nice people, regardless of what order they belonged to.
Yeah. Let's talk about anything else about business you'd like to develop or talk about?
Oh, I worked rather hard, I would say, because I had to. When I first came to Wabash, like I said before, I had no money and I was in debt. I had built a house in Fort Wayne in 1928, I think, or 29, and of course things got pretty rough, and I became delinquent in my payments, and when I came to Wabash, I owed a number of back payments on the house, and I also owed a coal bill in Huntington, and I wrote this coal dealer, and I told him, I said, I don't have any money, and I just can't do anything for you, but I said, as soon as I'm able to, I said, I'll pay you. So I got a nice letter back from him, and he says, don't worry, he says, take your time, which I thought was pretty nice. And after, I think, about another year, I wrote him again and asked him what my bill was, together with any interest that he wanted to put on. And I got a nice letter from him, and he says, you don't need to worry about any interest. He says, your bill is so much. And I sent him a check in full, and got the nicest letter back from him. He says, anytime you want any credit or any credit reference, why, he says, look me up, let me know.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I thought was really something. And of course the house eventually I had to sell to get out from an under, and took a licking on that naturally. However, I lived there for several years and enjoyed the home. It was a little rough. However, along about 1939, when I was working for Wickenheiser-Geedy Company here, we carried a line of Philco radios, and Philco distributor had a contest on and gave us a quota. Each dealer got a quota to make over a 6-month period, and those that went highest over their quota were given a free trip to Miami, Florida. So I worked hard, and I won that trip, and spent, I think we went down there Thursday morning and came back Sunday night or Monday night.
That was by flying?
No, that was by Pullman.
Pullman.
I went to bed at Cincinnati and woke up in Jacksonville, Florida, and looked out of the window and I saw a ragged palm tree there, and I said, gee, I'm going to get a picture of that. So I went out, stepped out, the train stopped there for a while, and I went out and got a picture of that palm tree, and I thought I really had something. And of course, later on when we got into Miami and that area, why, that beauty was really something that I'll never forget, because it was so different. Going to bed in Cincinnati with icicles hanging all over the train, over the Pullman, and snow on the ground, and storming and sleeting. Then to wake up there with everything so beautiful and sunny that I made up my mind at the time, if I ever get enough money, I'm going to come back here again. Yeah. And I worked for that end, and I think a person can do just about anything they want to do if they want to do it bad enough. And I have since spent a good many winters in Florida, and it was all through that one trip to Miami that got me so interested in Florida.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me talk about. Let's talk about your family. When you left home, did your parents know where you were going and so forth?
Well, yeah, they did. They knew I was going to go to Lansing, which
mm-hmm.
I visited my relatives there frequently, and they knew I was going there, and they didn't exactly know that I was going to Detroit from there. Mm-hmm. But I wrote them right after I got there.
And so you fairly well kept in touch with them?
Oh, yes.
And how old were you then when your father died? Were you in Detroit?
No, my father died when I was in
Fort Wayne?
In Huntington, and I think it was around about about 1929 or 30, around there.
Yeah. He lived to a pretty ripe old age then.
Yeah, he was 80, I think 85 when he died.
Yeah. Okay.
Around that age.
And then how about your children? Where were they born?
Well, they were all born in Fort Wayne. A couple of them in the hospital, one in an upstairs bedroom.
How did the upstairs bedroom happen? Why?
Well, didn't have time to get to the hospital.
Oh, it wasn't a question of money or
Yes, I'd say it was somewhat.
Yeah.
We had a midwife.
That was for which one?
That was for
Peg?
I think for Peg and Tom too. I think.
Both were born at home with a midwife.
I think so.
Yeah. And how much did a midwife charge in those days?
Well, I don't recall, but it was a lot less than the hospital fees would have been, even at that time,
Mm-hmm.
which I think was about $40 for a childbirth, something like that.
Yeah.
And so your midwife costs were somewhat lower than that.
Yeah. Did the midwife come and stay with the family, or?
Yeah, part of the time.
Yeah. And do the assist in the actual birth and then stay with the
Well,
mother?
no, the doctor was there. Yeah, they.
Oh, you would call a doctor?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and then she would be the doctor's helper then.
Right, yeah, sort of a nurse.
Yeah, and then she would stay with the mother and
Mm-hmm.
the child and everything like that. That was less expensive, huh?
Of course, at that time, childbirth meant the mother stay in a hospital for, I imagine, a week or 10 days or longer than that. And today, I think they cut that down to possibly just a few days.
So, what do you think that possibly was had the greatest impact on your life? What would you, some invention or some particular event or something of that nature?
Oh,
Well, do you remember the first automobile you saw?
I remember that, yes.
What was the occasion?
Well, we lived 5 miles from Portland. We lived on a farm, and of course at that time there were no pavements anyplace. Dusty roads, and one Sunday afternoon we had a big front yard, and my dad was always rather particular about how the yard was kept. It had to be mowed properly and kept neat, and we enjoyed it. We spent a lot of time out in the yard. And we were sitting there, and we heard some noise coming up the hill, chug, 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 chug. And we all, of course, run to the road, and there, this high-wheeled contraption, in fact, it had these regular buggy wheels on it, real high wheels. And I am not sure whether they had rubber tires on it or whether they had the steel rim tires on that automobile. But I do know it had, instead of a steering wheel, we had the stick for steering. And a man with the name of Eddie, I remember very well, he was a jeweler. And his son was sort of a playboy. And he got a hold of this horseless carriage, which they were known of at that time, and he spent a lot of time away from his business, or his father's business, and driving this horseless carriage around. And I still remember my dad saying, I can't understand young Eddie wasting his time like that, and messing around with a contraption of that sort. He says, I can understand where bicycles are here to stay, but he says these horseless carriages never. He says they'll never make any impact. And he says he's just wasting a lot of his time running around and spending his dad's money. So if my father could see the jet planes and some of the methods of travel we have now and going to the moon, it'd really be, he'd turn over in his grave if he knew what was going on.
Excuse me, let's turn the tape. This is the end of part 1. Part 2, Arthur J. Fedewa, March 27th, 1973. How about your family? Tell me about the kids.
I mean, my own?
Yes. Your children.
Well,
Who are they? And
my oldest son, Jim, we had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. Jim and Tom, Rita, and Peg. And Jim was married in 1948, I believe. And they had 2 daughters and 2 sons. Their oldest daughter, Beverly, is married now, lives in Columbus, Ohio, and teaches school there. She teaches children that are a little slow in learning, and her husband is a salesman for some securities firm, and also does some photography. He likes to work on travelogues and has traveled to Yugoslavia, spent several weeks over there taking pictures, and is going to go to the Andes Mountains for some more work in June or July of this year. And Fred is now a cadet at the Air Force Academy in Colorado. In fact, he'll be a senior next month. And David is in high school. This is his senior year in high school. And Mary is, I think, probably in the 7th or 8th grade. And then my daughter Rita took up, she studied office management and bookkeeping, and did a lot of stenographic work.
she followed in your footsteps.
Well, in a way, yeah, only she went a little further than I did. And finally met one of the fellows from St. Joe College that lived in Ohio, and he came home with Jim and Tom for weekends occasionally, and Rita got pretty well acquainted with George Dingledye, and they became pretty much interested in each other, and were married in 1948, and George finished his education at Tampa University in Tampa, Florida, and they had 4 children. Well, they had 4 boys and 1 girl.
Shame on you.
And they, 2 of them went to Ball State. Toby is in Ball State now, Ball State University, and is a senior. And will get his degree this summer. And John, the oldest boy, will get his degree, BS degree, in June of this year at IU, And George attends IU as a freshman. And then there is Christine, who now is studying in Fort Wayne at Purdue and IU University, and will be graduating in sometime this year. And Jimmy, the youngest boy, is in high school. And by the way, John was quite a swimmer and won a lot of trophies in the state and some out of the state. And Jimmy is following in his footsteps and getting trophies from all over the country. As a matter of fact, he's attended meets, state meets all over, and possibly will attend the national meet in Florida this spring. George, by the way, also was a swimmer, and they quite a family. They all get together. It's quite a treat for me and their grandmother. And then Tom has 2 children, a boy and a girl. Girl is 13, the boy is 15, and they're in school. And Peg, my youngest daughter, is in Fort Wayne. She married a photographer, commercial photographer, and he is pretty well known in that area as a photographer, and has done quite a bit of work for some of the bigger companies. And last year went to Miami to attend one of the conventions of one of his clients. Had a big convention down there, and he attended there and took a lot of pictures, and is fairly well known as a photographer. Their children, Steve is in high school, and Dennis is in grade school, and Patrick Joseph is in grade school, and one of the little girls, Barbara, is in first grade, and Kit is at home, looking forward to next year when she can be in school.
Was it a lot of satisfaction raising a family, or you really don't bask in the reflected pleasures until maybe your grandparents?
Yeah, I think it's wonderful to see your children grow up, and then to see them develop and marry, and their children grow up, and it's quite exciting. You get a big bang out of it, because it all seems like yesterday when our children were babies, and now grandchildren are getting married through college, and it's quite a thrill. You just it's pretty hard to keep up with it. You don't realize that what has happened during the, you might say, a few short years.
How about the depression? What comments do you have on the depression?
Well, it was pretty rough. At the time, I was selling Hoover vacuum cleaners from door to door, and seems very few people had any money, but through a lot of fast talk, I used to get into a home and clean a rug for free, and sometimes get the people interested enough to trade in their old broom. At that time, your competition was brooms and brushes, not other types of vacuum cleaners. And so we used to get a few sales occasionally, but it was tough. It was really tough. It was door to door, and I've had a lot of doors closed in my face. And but you just had to take it and smile and go to the next door, hope for something better. And like I said before, I think if anybody has to do something, if their back is up against the wall and they've got to do something, they can do almost anything they want to do. And even as tough as it was, I suppose I worked 10, 12 hours a day at this job and made enough to get something to eat and pay some of my bills.
Did Roosevelt look like a savior in those days, or to
I
you?
would say yes.
Why? Why would you say that?
Well, it was so tough. Anything would be better than what we had.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came in, and he was a pretty influential man, and I think he was a savior at the time. Closed the banks and reopened them again under government control, and got things on a healthy basis. At the time, if you had any money, what could you do with it? It was unsafe in the bank. You didn't know how good it was going to be there. And real estate, why, there's a lot of it for sale, but few people had money and forethought enough, if they had money, to invest in real estate, because it didn't look too good in those days.
Yeah.
But it finally all passed, and we got back on our feet again.
Were you in agreement that he should have ran as many times as he did?
Well, I don't know about that, but I think he was a wonderful man. I think he saved this country from the worst catastrophe.
Do you remember, did your family always have a telephone, or do you remember the first telephone?
Yeah, I very well remember the first telephone. It was one of these wooden boxes that were hung on the wall. We lived on a farm at the time in a town of Portland, Michigan, which is about 1,800 population at that time. And this telephone, as I say, was a wooden box with two bells on top, and you took the receiver down and turned the crank to get central, and then gave her a number, and finally got the other end. But, sometimes pretty rough.
Did you consider that pretty magical?
Yes, really. Of course, in those days, these things that came, a lot of the people, especially in the farming areas, they weren't as up to date as people in the cities, and a lot of these things were a little strange to them.
Do you remember the first motion picture that you saw?
Yes, I do.
What was the occasion? What was it?
Well, the old Opera House.
In what town?
Portland.
Uh-huh.
And they, of course, these are black and white movies, and they're a little bit unsteady. They would wobble a lot, and I still remember it was a farm, being a farm community. They were interested in farming pictures. And this picture they showed was 3 horses attached to a binder, a wheat binder. And I can still remember the horses going along, and the driver with a whip, it was just so marvelous that you just thought it was out of this world. Of course, previous to that, I remember the first talking machine. They had these cylinder records at that time that Edison made, and at this school, this country school, this district school which I attended, one evening they had a man there that demonstrated one of these machines with a great morning glory horn on it, and I didn't get to go. I was too little, but my brother went, and for days and days he talked about this talking machine, that a man could really talk into a machine and his voice would come back, which is quite marvelous. And when you look back, that was probably 73, 4 or 5 years ago.
Then you eventually got to hear one?
Yes, oh yeah. Yeah, later on. I think I heard my first radio in Fort Wayne. They had a demonstration at a school there.
Was that considered pretty revolutionary too?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, those things, you know, they say that in the last 50 years we've advanced faster than we did in thousands of years previous, which I think is very true, because during my lifetime I've noticed such an advancement. Well, your electric light and all that sort of thing is recent.
Yeah. And to anyone after these inventions, it's just commonplace. I mean,
yeah, take for granted that.
Yes, take it off.
And you sometimes say, well, what is there to invent? What is there left to do? But they're still doing it.
Well, looking back on your, be 80 years old this November, won't you?
Right.
What are some of your reflections as looking back? What do you think?
You mean of the advancement, the
Of
improvements,
anything.
or inventions?
One gentleman told me, he says, the only thing I've learned is that everyone valued human life very small value, put very small value on human life. Do you agree with that, or
I didn't.
do you think that today's society we have little value on human life, or not?
Well,
these are some of the reflections that
apparently, it's apparent that a lot of people place very little value on human life today.
Yeah. Does this amaze you, really?
Yes, and it scares me.
Why?
I hate to think of what's coming in the next 10 or 20 years if things continue. I heard an article on TV that in New York City alone, not the state, just in the city alone, that there are more people murdered in 1 month than there is in Ireland. And we read a lot about Ireland and are very much concerned, and we think very little of what's going on right under our noses here.
Yeah. Do you think that, do you feel that someone listening to this tape 20 years from now, do you think that conditions will be better, or the same, or worse?
Well, I'm not a pessimist, but still, I'm looking for a turn towards the better anyway. But on the other hand, I don't know. With all this crime, drugs, murders, and robbery, and all that sort of thing, I'm sometimes glad that I'm as old as I am, and I don't have to live another 30, 40, or 50 years to see what's coming.
What do you think the salvation or the answer is going to be to this problem?
Well, I wish I knew.
Dictator?
Well, I don't know. That doesn't sound so good.
Tremendous resurgence in religion and back to some type of fundamentalist religion, or possibly a return to the Victorian era, something of these natures, do you think, possibly, in 20 years, if we were listening to this?
Well, I think that, of course, we hear all the bad things. We hear the bad things that this younger generation is doing. We very seldom see on TV or hear over radio the good things that they accomplish, and they greatly outweigh the bad things, but we don't hear about them. But still, I don't know. I think that return to God is the answer to a certain point. I think that religion is. I think people are more religious-minded today than they were. Majority of people, you can tell that by the crowds that Billy Graham has on TV, and the people are coming back, and the people are more, they're broader-minded than they formerly were. I mean, they used to be, if you didn't belong to my religion, why, you didn't rate so high with me.
Yeah.
But today it's different. I think people have learned more. They're broader-minded, and after all, we're all here, and we're all headed for at least we're hoping to go to the same place, and working towards that end. But I don't know.
Do you think your thoughts are any different now that you're older than they were when you were, say, my age or younger, or it's your grandchildren?
Yes, I do.
What way?
Well, I think I'm more concerned about the future than I ever was before. Of course, we've lived pretty fast, and a lot of times we didn't stop to think what was going on or what we could do.
This isn't meant to be funny, but you're talking about the future living or the future dying? You're talking about the future while you're living, or is that what you're speaking about?
Oh, yeah. I think there are things that concern us that we're naturally worried about. I mean, things that bother you because...
You yourself? I mean...
About my personal self, you
Yeah.
mean? No, not necessarily that, no.
Do you worry about your health at 80?
No.
Really?
Not anymore, because I figure this, that I've lived already past the age of most people.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go tomorrow, well, I'm not any different than anybody else.
Yeah. But you don't worry about your health, or you're just happy to be living?
I'm glad to be alive and have my health, and I can enjoy myself. Few hobbies I have, I make the most of. And what else is there?
Money obviously doesn't bother you?
No.
Lack of money, or too much money, or either way?
No, I'm not too concerned. I mean, I don't want to be a spendthrift, or I don't want to. I can't see anybody wasting things, whether it's in food or anything else. That irks me. I can't. I've been taught and had to watch my pennies and save here and there and cut costs, go without things, deny myself a lot of things to get where I am, but I'm never sorry that I did.
Did you ever think you'd be as successful as you are?
No. Really, actually, at one time I still remember I talking to somebody and I said, gee, I said, someday I just hope to be rich enough to own a Buick automobile. That was the height of my ambition, to own a Buick. Well, of course, today, you feel a little different after you accomplish those things. and get to a point where that you had wished for, you still want to go a little further.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I think that I've lived a fairly useful life. I don't have many regrets. I've done a lot of foolish things, of course, but after all, I think I've been very fortunate in accomplishing what little I have, and with a nice family, nice children, grandchildren, and everybody seems to be happy. I don't know what else a fella can do.
Yeah. Did you enjoy your 30-some years so far with in Rotary Club? Did you?
Yes, definitely. There were great years. Not that I've done anything for Rotary, but I think Rotary's done a lot for me. I particularly enjoy Rotary away from home.
Mm-hmm.
When we're down in Florida or Texas or Arizona or California, I get a big kick out of attending Rotary in those places because you meet some of the finest people
Mm-hmm.
in the world and become fast friends with a lot of them. And you feel at home, and I really enjoyed Rotary very, very much.
It's been good for you, and you've been good for it, then, I'd say.
Well, I haven't done much for it. However, I had a perfect attendance for 12 years.
You must have done something right.
Well, I attended regularly, that's all I can say. But I do enjoy it, even here. I mean, I don't mean to say that I don't enjoy going to meetings here and at home. I do very much because...
Do you believe in the Rotary philosophy, the four-way test and service and all that?
Absolutely, every inch of it.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Yeah. But I think I met some of the finest people
Oh.
in traveling in Rotary.
How about your retreat experiences now? Has that been worthwhile and rewarding?
Oh, definitely.
Satisfying?
Very, yeah. I started in 1937. I had heard a lot about this Notre Dame retreat, and had friends that went and they invited me, and at the time you were supposed to make a donation of $10, which at the time was big money for me, and I never was able to, or never felt that I was able to do it. However, I wanted to. I wanted to go. And not until 1937 did I decide to go. So in 1937, I went alone from here. I was the only man from here. And got up to Notre Dame, and of course that's a pretty big campus, and I didn't know where to go. I was lost, but I did find a place to register. And they gave me a room in Soren Hall, which is one of the oldest halls there. But I met a number of people there that I knew from Fort Wayne, and Charlie Brink, my brother-in-law, and other people that became good friends. Yeah, the next year I picked up another fellow. I picked up Howard Hipskind, who was a former Notre Dame student, and the two of us went. And I was in 38 and 39. I picked up a few more, and later on we've had as many as 19 go from here. And I hate to miss it. I haven't missed a year since 1937, with the exception of war years where there weren't any halls available, and they didn't have it. didn't have any retreat. But since that, I've gone pretty regularly. In fact, I never missed one. And I hope to continue going for a few more years at least.
Well, we're just about out of conversation. I think we've exhausted everything. Can you think of anything you'd like to add to the tape for the record?
Well, I feel pretty proud of my accomplishments as far as the retreats is concerned. In fact, 1964, I was given a plaque that was signed by the Pope in recognition of what I had done in bringing members from this, I would say, rather non-Catholic community of Wabash. We have about probably 10% Catholic here, and we've had a pretty good percentage of those men attending that retreat during that time, Catholics as well as non-Catholics. And I feel that I've gained a lot from it, and I also feel that the people that I have been instrumental in coming with me have gained a lot by it.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about anything else?
I don't know. I'm a little proud of that plaque up there.
That's Knights of Columbus Man of the Year. Very nice, very nice. Well, it isn't very often, I imagine, that anybody doing oral history gets a chance to interview their own father-in-law. But it's been a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed it. And
I have, but I'm wondering what good you're going to get out of it.